that ground of our being that we each really feel is our own being. It is experienced as the same in all of us, and then we can really
Mm,
connect. There's a real experience of oneness, being to being, and yet that ground for each
yes.
of us is our own being. So sometimes people will say to me, well, it's impersonal, isn't it? And I'm like, no, it's the most
Mm,
personal. I mean, it's universal,
right.
but it's as personal as we can be with ourselves.
Welcome to the Effortless Mindfulness Podcast. I'm Loch Kelly, and here I share talks and deep dialogues with leading experts in the field of meditation, psychology, and neuroscience. Together, we'll explore how everyday people like you and me can live an awakened life of clarity and compassion. You'll also find micro meditations in every podcast episode. If you want to try more of these, you can go to mindfulglimpses.com to download the new app to experience immediate benefits. Because the love and peace we're all seeking is already here, anywhere, anytime. Enjoy. So, welcome everyone. It's my great pleasure today to welcome Judith Blackstone, friend and colleague.
Thank you so much, Locke. I'm loving being here with you.
Yes. So, we have a great opportunity today to dive into a kind of deep dialogue that you and I have had in the past, and being longtime colleagues and friends. So, we have your book as the touchstone, which I had the pleasure of reading and is really quite a wonderful book, The Fullness of the Ground, a guide to embodied awakening. So there's a lot to define for people. I think people have had the experience, but I think a lot of our work is experientially defining things and then helping people experience it and know what they're experiencing it so they can return to it themselves. So, just starting with saying a little about your inspiration for writing it and what your sense of what the main themes are.
Well, my inspiration for writing it is my decades of teaching. This is, I think, the seventh book that I'm bringing out about the work I teach, which is called the realization process. And as I continue to teach, as people ask questions, as I deepen in my own practice and realization, what I'm saying, it doesn't really change, but it does, hopefully, get clearer, a little bit deeper. So, and then also, the field keeps expanding, and so there's my inner dialogue with the teachers around me, and that also serves as inspiration to sit down and write.
Yeah, beautiful. So, what would you say? I know the realization process relates to the title, which is Embodied Awakening. Can you say maybe what you mean by embodied
Yes,
awakening?
awakening, non-dual awakening, of course, has many different meanings depending on who's teaching it, who's practicing it. But in the realization process, it means actually uncovering in ourselves a very subtle, undivided consciousness. I call it fundamental consciousness. When we uncover it, we experience it. We actually experience it as being who we are. We experience it pervading our whole body, and at the same time, pervading our environment. And that means that we are both embodying fundamental consciousness and at the same time transcending our individual embodiment and experiencing actual oneness with other people and with our environment.
Beautifully said. So yeah, let's unpack that a little bit. So, that first, even people who have done a lot of mindfulness meditation, even studied Buddhism, both of us come from having studied really a wide range of psychology and a wide range of consciousness and meditative types of practice. But certainly from that Mahayana uh, to the Vajrayana and then Dzogchen and Mahamudra, particularly, that word, fundamental consciousness, what you're translating for for Rigpa. Is that right?
Yeah, I am. I think that even each of those lineages within Buddhism would talk about Rigpa a little bit differently, conceive of it differently. And I'm also drawing on my experience in several Hindu traditions, Advaita Vedanta, Kashmir Shaivism. Because my own experience, my own spiritual awakening was of undivided ground of being. I'm always on the lookout for it, as it's mentioned in different philosophies and different teachings. Uh, each of those traditional teachings comes at it a little bit differently, talks about it a little bit differently. So I'm not aligning myself with any one particular. I'm just talking about how I have come to experience it and teach it.
Yes, and yet that whole group of lineages and teachings, just the bringing of that into not only on the map of consciousness, but literally the primacy or the dimension of consciousness that is what heals, is essentially who we are, um, and maybe even more importantly, saying a little bit about that often it's considered to be esoteric or only for advanced practitioners. And I think you and I particularly have this both direct experience with ourselves and with students, that this fundamental consciousness, which is talked about throughout the ages and throughout cultures and traditions, that's the most profound dimension, is accessible by everyday
Yes,
people.
I think we're ready for it. Maybe it wasn't the case, centuries ago, when the Longchenpa in Tibet said, that if you have more than 8 students, you're not really teaching non-duality. Now many people seem to be able to access this, and it is considered an advanced level, but with various techniques that we're all bringing forward. Um, People, we can say ordinary, whatever that means. Sensitive people does take some degree of sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
Many people are sensitive enough, and also wanting that, knowing that that's a possibility,
Yes.
that we can get to something that feels authentic and that actually feels unified. One has to, feels far out to a lot of people. One has to have an inkling that that's
Right.
possible from something in their experience or something they read that they resonated with. So I think it is growing. More and more people are able to believe that that's possible and then to access it.
Yeah. And, a lot of what I think you and I do is, from our own experience and studies, is try to listen to our students and uh, see what doorways actually work for them. Because everyone's a little different. They have different learning styles and different obstacles. Um, but that doesn't mean that if they can't initially recognize this fundamental consciousness, that it's not available or they're not capable. That it's really more about the doorway or the teacher, I find, than it is about the person. Because with most people, I know within short period of time can have a glimpse of it, and then if they're motivated through their own experience, um, then they have to be willing and interested and be consistent about the gradual
Yeah,
unfolding.
absolutely. That's been my experience too.
Yeah. And so when the meeting of what has been often contemplative and meditative, and then people who are coming to us and others who are coming with great pain or psychological trauma, or um, just even being sensitive, as you say, just normal trauma with a sensitive person creates great pain and can be a motivation. What do you find about the importance of bringing those two traditions together?
Oh, it's absolutely important. And one thing about embodying fundamental consciousness or embodied spiritual awakening is that the more we embody fundamental consciousness, the clearer is our realization, and the steadier, the longer, the unwavering realization comes in. And in order to embody fully, I have found that we need to really approach those parts of ourselves that, because of painful psychological circumstances, because of painful circumstances in our childhood, we have constricted, right? We've blocked. So those areas are not available for our own contact, and we can't then open them to that pervasive, undivided dimension of consciousness. So right away, we really have one path, and that's resolving, releasing whatever has been constricted relationally growing up, and being able to contact ourselves more deeply, and then being able to open more fully.
Yeah, beautiful. So, as you were saying before, it may not have been the time for awakening. Awakening is more available. And one of the things that makes it more available is, I believe, bringing contemporary science and neuroscience and psychology together to support the embodied awakening. So I think when you put those two words together, it's very important. It starts to make a distinction between what some people in some traditions think of awakening out of the body, or awakening, transcending, and maybe that's a good place to talk about what you mention as two types of non-duality.
Yeah, I do. I do talk about two types of non-duality, as has been delineated by in Tibetan Buddhism, because I think it helps
Mhm.
people make sense of what they hear as a conflict between different non-dual teachers. Um, the Tibetan Buddhists uh, very conveniently made two categories, which they call Shentang and Rangtang. And Shentang is the one that I'm aligned with, that you're aligned with, where we can actually know this
Mhm.
undivided ground of ourselves. And that requires a particular set of practices. They're different in different traditions, but they all go to uh, inward contact pretty much. They're they, they might be transcendent psychologically, because I don't think the psychological knowledge was there in old Tibet. Uh, but still, there's a self other oneness, whereas the Rangtang
Hmm.
category of Buddhists do not believe in any sort of ground. They're focused on a clear and immediate perception of the changing flux of life, and which of course is great. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But
Right.
it in the way it's often taught, and sometimes maybe perhaps mistaught, I don't know. Uh, the student becomes fixated on the world outside of them, right? Like, you want a clear, immediate perception of the world outside of you. But that to me is not oneness, and it often goes along with the teaching in the Rangtong, in the no ground teachings, of a denial of one's own existence altogether. You have to sort of erase your existence, erase your emotional response to the
Mhm.
world, erase your opinions and your thoughts and so forth, even erase a sense of your own existence, in order to just get that clear perception of the world around you. I don't know if many Rangtang teachers are meaning it that way, but that's the way it's often taught these days. And that I find very
Yes.
concerning, because as a psychotherapist and as a spiritual teacher, I've seen many people try not to exist, which is kind of the
Hmm.
opposite of what we're doing, I feel. So they dull themselves out. They may refer to themselves in the third person, this one. Uh,
Yeah.
they don't want to focus on anything that happened to them before, right now, as adults. They try to dull down their emotional responses, thinking that an enlightened person has no emotional responses. Whereas in the Shinton, in the uncovering of that ground, because we experience it pervading our own being, it actually opens us to all of our human capacities. So, in fact, we become more responsive emotionally, more able to think, new thoughts, not the same old tape loops, more actual sense of existing, which is a very interesting feel to it, and you have to feel it to believe it. But we have an actual sense of our own existence, um, which on a psychological level, of course, is very healing, because a lot of trauma and even just simply unpleasant experiences growing up tends to cause us to sort of erase ourselves. So that sense that we're actually existing, that we take up space, that there's validity to our existence, and a feel to it, that I find both healing psychologically and also crucial to self-other oneness.
Yeah, beautifully said. Yes. Yeah, that sense that, in some traditions, sometimes it can be a gradual, part of the path that you discover, I am a solid separate self. Now there's no self. And then people can set up camp. There's no self. There's no one here. I've had clients come in and say, there's no one here named John. There's just, but my partner thinks I'm dissociated.
Right.
What do you think?
And what
And
do
I'm
you
like,
think?
should I say I agree? Should I say I agree with the partner, or should
Right.
I try to be more
Yeah.
neutral?
Yeah, absolutely. The no self teaching can be helpful for letting go of chronic rigid patterns of false self, right? I am a teacher, I am a bad person, I'm a good person, where there's a distance, a cognitive, abstract distance between the experience of oneself and who we think we are. And so that letting go, of course, can be very important, and very helpful. But then, that actual tangible experience of being is should follow that, I believe, right? Should then follow on that.
Yeah, and a simple map that I've kind of put together from having started with
Right,
Theravada and doing some Mahayana
right,
and Zen and with Dzogchen, but particularly Mahamudra, which kind of Sutra Mahamudra follows the whole, give credence to all the tradition. That there's kind of a solid separate self. Then there's a waking up from that and recognizing the insight that that is not a solid separate self. That there's anicca or change, and that there is no one there. So in some ways, the kind of initial insight is a recognition of who we're not. And then there's kind of a gap that some traditions like don't know mind and not knowing that there's this kind of centerlessness, and then from centerlessness, the centerlessness is awake. It has clarity. It's not only what I'm aware of, and not only it's who I am and what's aware by itself effortlessly. And then some people set up camp there as a kind of big sky mind, or just pure awareness is the only reality. Everything else is a movie, as if that's the screen and this is not
right,
real, but I'm
right.
only the pure awareness. And then what we're talking about is often talked about as one taste, or the union of awareness and appearance, or emptiness and
That's right.
form. Form is emptiness, but don't forget
Mhm.
the second
Yeah,
part.
yeah, absolutely. And it's an interesting thing because um, that ground of our being that we each really feel is our own being, it is experienced as the same in all of us, and then we can really
Mm,
connect. There's a real experience of oneness, being to being, and yet that ground for each
yes.
of us is our own being. So sometimes people will say to me, well, it's impersonal, isn't it? And I'm like, no, it's the most personal. I mean, it's universal,
Right.
but it's as personal as we can be with ourselves. And as we know ourselves, because it's a disentangled dimension, fundamental consciousness, it pervades all of our changing experience. It
Yes.
it pervades and it reveals our uniqueness. So even our uniqueness,
Yes.
which or it might be a different meaning of the word personal, our individual uniqueness
Right.
comes more clearly to the fore, uh, manifests more clearly as we know ourselves as this one ground that is one taste in all of us. So both come in at the same time, and that's why it is psychologically maturing, because who we are individually with our individual gifts and aspirations and needs becomes clearer to us and to our to our partners, to our friends, people around us.
Yes, beautiful. Yeah, and that really is the meaning of non-dual, meaning
Yeah.
not two. It's not that some people say there's non-dual awareness. That's non-duality is pure awareness, but non-duality is non-dual awareness plus relative reality. So in Buddhism, they say it's the two truths: ultimate reality and relative reality are not two. And that experience, as you're saying, is this ground of being, which is the union, like an ocean of awake consciousness that rises as a particular, very unique wave, and you're a wave and I'm a wave, and we have the same. It's
Yes.
not either or. Oh, you're different wave. No. Oh, we're the same ocean. That's the answer. No, we're the different. No, we're same. Oh,
We're both.
we're
Yeah.
both. And that both and non is really kind of what the other way of saying non-dual, which sounds like an abstract word, but it's not just oneness. It's not just awareness. It's not just uh, the small self growing up into an awake self. It's this new view and new you that has this feeling of stillness and movement and awareness that feels alive and tender and sweet um, and connects to other beings and
Yes.
other life in a way that is not like a very relaxed ego in your best sense of yourself when you're very smart and strong and you feel connected. When you drop into this beingness, there's just you're not
That's
trying
right.
to do anything. It's just
It is a
it's a
relief.
relief.
Life becomes much easier. I mean, not only much more enjoyable, but much easier. Oh, there's an acceptance too. There's a rightness, and that makes life much easier. We're not fighting against it. So this is this is the content that's wedded to the stillness, and so we're open to that wherever it takes us, which again is a maturity, and takes a while, that kind of acceptance of life, the movement of life. Yeah.
Yeah, and these different doorways to access it that people have. I know one of your main practices is very similar to one of my main practices, which I call natural embodiment. So, and one of yours in the realization process, the fundamental thing that's the same is that instead of being aware from your small separate sense of self in your head and developing, as many do in initial mindfulness practices, a strong attentional ability from this small mind to another object, whether it's inside or out, that feels like a flashlight that becomes strong and kind of helps your mind calm and clarify. That there's a way that, as we may do that in the beginning or not, that now actually we can experience our body directly from
That's
within
right.
and
The
all
body
around.
itself. his experience is made of that same consciousness. Yeah.
Yeah. So then when that happens, and certainly, we can kind of invite people kind of in a short version of it, just, what if this wasn't the center? So when we awaken from that small separate self, when we go back and really feel it, this is one way that I experienced after kind of initial awakenings. I was like, okay, so now here I am in more awake consciousness. Let's just see what it's like. How do I get, re-identified? And what does re-identified feel like? Where does it locate, and how does it form, and what does the formation feel like? Then you really get this sense that there's this formation in the head that kind of represses the body and holds emotions and tightens around certain things and starts to look in a very narrow way. So that dropping, once that premise is given, that fundamental consciousness is everywhere equally outside and within, let's just inhabit our bodies and be aware from our hands.
Yeah, there's a lot of emphasis in the realization process also on opening to fundamental consciousness, not just through our head, but through our whole body. Now, the head is part of the body and an important part of the body, but we actually open to quality of awareness, quality of emotion, quality of physical sensation, which are aspects of the stillness itself, aspects of fundamental consciousness itself. And when we can feel that, we have opened through our whole instrument, our whole body, rather than just our head. Another concern that you and I seem to share is that non-dual non-duality is sometimes taught as awareness, and people even make this sort of movement, non-dual awareness, but not just there. It's not there, but it's not just there. You need to open it, and we have this wonderful central channel, which is talked about, of course, in both Buddhism and Hinduism. And when we can actually contact ourselves all the way to that very subtle core of ourselves, then we can enter into fundamental consciousness through our whole being. And that's when we actually feel that we are that consciousness. It's not something separate from ourselves that we take on or that we dissolve into, but it actually feels like who we are. But that doesn't mean that it pervades everywhere. It doesn't mean that we are that table across the room, because that fundamental consciousness pervades our individual being. So it's very clear, even though we feel oneness between our own being and everything around us, that we are also separate. We're both separate and one at the same time. You bring up the aspect of relationship, how those two waves can then meet, and that's also coming in with this new awareness, new understanding in the non-dual field, I think, that of embodied awakening. Because I remember years ago, at those non-dual conferences we used to present at, people would always ask, can you have a relationship in non-duality? And people like,
Right.
well, I don't know. How's that possible? Because it's not two. But the actuality, when you realize it, is that our relationships all deepen. They become, as you say, that tenderness becomes mutual tenderness. Mutual connection. We can connect just as we feel fundamental consciousness pervading all the way through our own being and the furniture. We also feel it, connecting all the way through each other, and then that makes for a very deep, rich contact that we can have with anyone. We can have that with anyone. Of course, it's more enjoyable. There is something to be said for the individuals that we particularly love. But the actuality is we can experience this oneness and this resonance with any other person who is also attuned to it.
There's something about that aliveness that, again, the non-duality, that nirvana and samsara are not two. So that's the radical thing. And that gets us, so starting with that, now coming to the emotional body. So even terror and rageful parts and super judgmental parts and traumatized children and protectors of those traumatized children that want to it's their fault, it's my fault, it's their fault, it's my fault, that they're all made of fundamental consciousness, that movement. And then asking clients, take a look for yourself. Let's see, when you're in fundamental consciousness, now come back and let's go see who's here, what's this that was alien that you wanted to get rid of, that you were trying to think was just a negative emotion that needs to be gotten rid of, right? So what is your...
It's not very different from yours. I work the psychological aspect of the realization process really focuses on constrictions in the fascia of the body, and the fascia being that level of tissue, which is really a oneness in itself, all through the body, around every certainly every part of the body, perhaps every cell, where we can pull away from our attunement to the ground of being. And certainly the ground of being is in that, but we have pulled away from that sense of who we really are. And those pockets of constriction in the body become unconscious parts of us. Usually, we don't know they're there, which is fine. It means that most of us can live a perfectly normal life with parts of ourselves constricted, because everyone has parts of themselves to some extent constricted. So we have techniques in the realization process for working into those fat tensions in the fascia, and when they release the memory, the emotion, of energy, and they become part of that undivided, part of our realization of that undivided ground of being, fundamental consciousness. So yes, we can say they're made of fundamental consciousness, but they're also made of tension in the fascia, energetic holding, and and memory, which can become released.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that, but just that ultimately they're just
That's right.
contracted fundamental consciousness. They're not other or alien, even with, the critic or the ego, that whole idea that we're getting rid of it or we have to fight it, or the superego has to be the critic, you need to yell back at it, or that even in very cognitive oriented, that you just need to replace
that won't work.
Negative thoughts with positive thoughts. And it's not treating the pattern with the it's communication as it is. What is it trying to do? It's trying to protect something. It just has ignorance as its
the respect.
As its foundation.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you completely, Luck. That we need to treat those parts of ourselves with absolute respect. I mean, that's how we kept ourselves intact, and that was our true reaction. Our true reaction to the painful world around us. So absolute respect for that. And I think also that's also coming more into our beautiful field, that it's no longer denigrating the story, our psychological history is something to be, just cast aside as not real. No, it was real, and it is real, part of our own actual reality, and as you say, made basically of our reality. But to approach it with absolute respect for how we managed to survive.
Yeah. And then in order to do that, so that's the kind of which one goes first that you and I think, feel like, well, if you can get in touch with fundamental consciousness sooner than later, that has the capacity to naturally love and heal, rather than, you have to progressively clear everything out until you have a initial awakening or discover fundamental consciousness at the last stage of growth or practice.
That's right. That old idea, I think Ken Wilber put forward and respect to Ken Wilber, his contribution was tremendous. But he did have that sort of linear sort of view that first somehow get rid of your ego and all your stuff, and then you get to that last stage. And I'm in complete agreement with you that if we can attune directly the fundamental consciousness, directly to the subtle core of ourselves, the central channel, or Sushumna, it's called in yoga, then that's tremendously healing and can help us dissolve and release the holding patterns.
Yeah, beautiful. I want to, because I don't think we ever talked about this, which is one of my unique versions of doing that practice of embodiment is, in the unfolding of my own awakening, it kind of feels like, well, awareness starts showing itself to itself. So it's like this own intelligence, like I'm not doing it. I'm not trying to be smart about it. It's like, oh, look at that. Oh, it's like this. Oh, well, look at that. Well, what's this like? Oh, it's that. And there's kind of, so one of the things was from that pervasive and then spacious. And then, so now when I'm aware of something outside, or even inside, instead of attention, I feel like I'm interconnected, almost like, so it's like local fundamental consciousness goes out to connect to something rather than attentional ability, a type of awareness. So it's almost like it's lit up from within and connected.
There's a resonance, right? We don't have to
There's a resonance.
Search for it. If two people are both in it, there's a resonance. Yeah.
There's resonance. So what I started realizing is, okay, I'm calling that local awake consciousness, and then non-local awake consciousness, and then embodied awake consciousness. So the local awake consciousness is like they call it child awareness returns to mother awareness in the Bardo. So the child awareness is identified with the small self, and it can unhook and drop and be aware of your jaw and your face from within. And then that local awareness is actually what's inhabiting your throat, and you've actually decentered, and you're just doing it a little more gradually as it now moves to your shoulder and now drops below your neck to be aware of your upper body from within your upper body. So the subject and object are the same. And there's this inner knowing that now is spacious and seamless. So there now becomes this open field, which you're equally now, and then it drops and you're aware of your whole body and you're directly from within. So you're, but that kind of unique, that seems to have helped people get there, is to kind of distinguish that local version of the non.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a version of what I'm doing too. I mean, it's a different practice, but similar. I start often with just having people become aware of their hands and recognize that experience, right? And if you're aware of your hands, you might notice how cold or hot they are, how rigid they are, how relaxed, and then enter into them and live within them. And that shift from being aware of to living within.
So that shift. So we're talking about the same thing. That same shift, which is, people can articulate in different ways, but the pointer of that shift is not in many of the, practices of meditation, it's usually using a mindful witness or a attentional system, but the actual, and even doing a body scan, people say, well, just imagine yourself, coming through your body. And there's like, well, if you're in your imagination, you're in your head.
That's right.
So it's actually, relax your foot, but, instead of relax your foot, now relax your calf, come all the way into your foot.
It's a big difference. That's right. So once people have made that shift, then in the realization process, we go into inhabiting each part of the body and then the whole body. We attune also to qualities that we can uncover, which seem to be innate within the body, the actual feel of our power, feel of our love, feel of our intelligence, so forth. And then we attune to the space outside the body and then the space that pervades inside and out. So this is just another
Yes.
sequence, sounds, goes to exactly the same place that your sequence does. So we've come
Yes.
to two different sequences, right, to get to the same place, which I
Yeah.
think is fascinating. Also because we
Yes.
both
Yeah.
got
And
to
it's
it
so,
on our own.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
just
And then kind of tried
playing
to
with
find a
our
way to
own need.
communicate it. Yeah. How do I let other people know that, this is so great? How do I invite them in without just saying, well, you're just going to have your own experience in your own time. It's like, well,
Yeah, try
try
this.
this, like, okay. And then get reports back, like, how's that working? Well, I'm getting stuck as I I'm getting
Exactly.
stuck here in my emotional heart.
And
Okay.
that's where we
Okay.
bring in the
That
release
kind of thing.
work. And yeah,
Right.
so that's very interesting because I certainly got to the realization process practices healing myself and also having
Mm-hmm.
that kind of glimpse of that. It used to feel like a presence that I could bring into myself, and then I realized that it wasn't a presence outside that I was bringing in, but a presence in and out. And how can I
Yes.
bring other people along to that? Of course, I was teaching dance at the time that I was doing all this
Uh-huh.
self-healing work. So I had people come to the dance studio where I lived. I lived in the dance studio in New York City, and began teaching them these. And that's how this sequence developed because I taught it to my dance students, and they had all sorts of questions and their own take on it, and so I was very glad for that too because then after a while, it wasn't just the solution to my problems and difficulties and challenges, but came out of the teaching itself, and then developed from those dance classes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of insights early on from
Yeah.
playing sports. So again, like, what's the relationship between inner and outer and actual living? And then it led me to become more
Yeah.
sensitive. I think I somehow became more a sensitive human being, or maybe I was already, but for whatever reason, it just made me curious about, well, what's everything else going on in here, and how come other people
That's
aren't
right.
talking about it? And then I had some initial glimpses. The first book someone gave me was Zen and the
Right.
Art of Archery, and just that, well, wait a minute, there's other people around the world that value this, and he's describing what I'm experiencing. And then I try to talk to friends, and they were like, I don't know what you're talking
I
about.
have exactly that, and that's so amazing, Luck, because that's how I got to the Asian teachings. I was like, these people know
Uh,
about this. They know about it. This
yeah.
kind of has been so private and weird, my own experience, and yet here they were just, this is how it is, and you can do
Yeah.
these steps, and yeah, it was just a revelation, truly a revelation to find that
Yeah.
this existed in the world already. So it was a real and I understood then that it's absolutely real, not at all something I'm making up of myself, but absolutely something real that we can all get to, this ground of ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so precious because, you know, that, that other, uh, basic goodness or essential well-being. It's not just kind of fireworks of Kundalini, or this kind of transcendent clarity that's beyond all. It's really that innocence and the amness, of of being. Why being is used as a and it and the feeling of that is what we've all longed for, and it's just so great to to have a fellow colleague and friend and traveler to share
Yeah.
ideas and practical experiential
Yes.
methods, really, because I
Yeah.
think that's what I'm interested. I'm not interested in the
Yeah.
philosophy. It's just philosophy is a description of something that's beyond words, that's attempting to try to
Yeah.
be uh, brought back into
Yeah, I
experience.
think I think these practices have evolved. That through you, through me,
Mm-hmm.
and through a few our other colleagues, they have evolved
Mm-hmm.
even from the very profound Asian teachings, because of the specific psychological knowledge, and not only psychological knowledge, but the journey, the evolution of psychology in this country, which has really made a lot of twists and turns and gotten smarter and smarter,
Yeah.
uh, more insightful. So that has produced a new portal, a new way to get to this experience in a way that's
Mm-hmm.
feels very real. That's not temporary. It's not a peak experience, just as you say. It's
No.
ongoing. In fact, after that, it is wonderful, and there are wonderful moments in it. But in general, it's quite a sober experience, quite a grounded, sober experience, a way of being. And yeah, I think something new is really being born in the spiritual world.
Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Judith.
you. Yeah, it's beautiful to connect with you.
Embodiment scan. Those who have taken a yoga class or mindfulness based stress reduction MBSR course will likely have done a body scan meditation. This embodiment scan practice is similar, but you're not scanning your body from your everyday mind using attention. This is a non-dual body scan. In this glimpse, we're going to have local awareness unhook from thinking and then drop to know and experience your entire body directly from within, and then open to discover the safety of being boundlessly embodied. This is a good practice for helping you wake up from the limitations of your small mind. You may also find this is a good practice to help you fall asleep at night. So begin by finding a comfortable way of sitting or lying down. Notice the feeling of your breath in your body. Now, shift your awareness to notice the location of where you're focusing from. Next, let local awareness unhook from this focusing location and begin to move down, feeling its way down through your face to feel and know your jaw directly from within. Be aware of not looking down from your head to your body, and notice what it's like when local awareness begins to know and feel your body directly from within. Feel local awareness move down to feel and sense your neck from within. Then feel local awareness begin to expand to include feeling your shoulders, arms, and hands. And then further expand to be aware directly from within your chest, your upper back, belly, and lower back. Allow local awareness to remain aware from within your upper body and continue to move downward to include your hips, pelvis, thighs, legs, and feet, knowing them directly from within. Allow local awareness to be aware of your entire body from head to toe from within. As your awareness moves down the length of your body, notice the releasing of holding and a deep relaxation. Be aware of the space, awareness, contact, and effervescent aliveness of the experience of knowing your body directly from within. Feel your body from the awake awareness within as a field of effervescent energy. Notice the awareness and energy are mingling as both your soft body and a boundless quality that begins to open outward. Feel how energy and movement are happening equally outside and within, and that awareness is aware simultaneously from outside and within. Feel your breath happening by itself like waves in the ocean. Feel that awake awareness is also happening by itself. Notice that awareness extends beyond your body to notice the space in the room and the awareness energy as an interconnected dynamic field, subtly connected to everything and everybody, while feeling embodied here and now. Enjoy the feeling of the natural, boundless freedom and the awareness energy embodied. Rest in the fullness of interconnected embodiment. You can remain here until you feel ready, as if waking from the best nap of your life. Enjoy. Thanks for listening. This podcast is offered freely. And if you've enjoyed this, please download a free trial of our new app at mindfulglimpses.com. There we offer daily micro meditations and in-depth programs to support your awakening.